That morning still plays in my mind like a scene I never wanted to replay, sharp, vivid, and impossibly heavy. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it was the beginning of the end, long before I realized anything was falling apart. The sky outside was a flat, lifeless gray, the kind that hangs over you like a warning you don't know how to read. No birds chirping, no sunlight creeping through the blinds, just stillness. Aaron's alarm stayed silent. Mine did too. We overslept. Something so small, so ordinary, it should have been nothing more than a joke between us later. But that tiny interruption in our perfect little routine, that harmless moment of extra sleep, it became the first tug on the thread I'd been desperately hoping no one would pull, the thread that held all my secrets together. And by the time I realized what was unraveling, it was already too late. Aaron moved through the morning with his usual calm, steady, patient, almost unshakable. He never raised his voice, never snapped, never lost control. I used to find that comforting, even admirable. A man who didn't break. But somewhere along the years, that same calmness began to feel like a heavy blanket smothering me. I felt invisible, unnoticed. While he spent long hours chasing promotions and deadlines, I taught yoga, guiding strangers toward peace I could never find within myself. And then Charles showed up. He worked at the same health club, a charismatic personal trainer with an easy grin and a way of making every woman feel like she was the only one in the room. He laughed at things that weren't even funny. He complimented me like it was second nature. And his hand lingered on my arm just a little too long. For the first time in years, I felt alive again. I didn't plan for it to go where it went. I told myself it was harmless flirtation. But that morning, the morning Aaron and I overslept, I found myself pretending to look for a hairbrush while stealing glances at a folder open on my laptop. A folder filled with messages from Charles. Our messages. Our plans. Our betrayal displayed in bright pixels. I'd even titled the secret itinerary, Aloha for a Great Time. Our private joke. Our private sin. While Aaron prepared for an important business trip, one that might have earned him the promotion he'd worked toward for years, I was preparing for something far darker, an escape. 2 weeks in Hawaii. Just Charles and me. No cold dinner silence, no chores, no expectations. I convinced myself it was freedom. But the truth is, it was cowardice wrapped in fantasy. As I hurried out the door that day, I forgot to close my laptop. I remember hesitating for half a second, glancing back, wondering if I should go back and shut it. But I pushed the thought aside. Aaron never snoops, I told myself. He trusts me. That trust should have comforted me. Instead, it made me feel like a villain. When I returned later that night, everything looked painfully normal. Aaron greeted me with that warm, familiar smile, the one that used to melt every problem away. Only this time, something in his eyes felt sharper, more focused. I ignored it. For weeks, we moved like a couple following a script. We had our dinners. We watched our shows. We even shared the same bed and soft goodnight kisses. But beneath the surface, something was shifting. His silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was cold, heavy, watching. And still I didn't stop. Every night, after he fell asleep beside me, I'd lie awake texting Charles under the covers like a teenager with a secret. Whispering promises into the dark. Promises I wasn't brave enough to face in the light. Charles fed me fantasies. Adventure. Passion. A life without boundaries. And I let myself believe I deserved it. Finally, the day arrived. Aaron's trip was scheduled for the morning. Mine, my escape, was set for the next day. My suitcase was hidden in the back of the closet, filled with sundresses, swimsuits, and everything I needed for a brand new life. Aaron walked into the room wearing his navy suit, the one he always wore when he needed confidence. His tie was slightly crooked, and I reached out instinctively to fix it. But he gently stopped my hand mid-air. "I've got it," he said softly, his smile too delicate, too knowing. He kissed my forehead before leaving, and for a brief moment, my heart clenched with a warning, a whisper telling me to stop before the lies consumed everything. But I shoved the feeling aside like I always did. Later that evening, Charles called. "Gate 14, Terminal B," he said, buzzing with excitement. "Tomorrow morning. By noon, we'll be in paradise." Paradise? That's what I kept repeating in my head. That night, Aaron returned early. He looked drained, defeated. "The client's canceled," he said with a heavy sigh. "The trip's off. We're losing the whole deal." My blood ran cold. If he stayed, everything fell apart. Charles would be waiting alone at the airport. My plan, my escape, would blow up in my face. I forced myself into sympathy. "Oh no, Aaron, I'm so sorry," I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. He stared at me, too long, too quietly. And then he smiled. "Just teasing, honey. The trip's still on." Relief slammed into me like a wave. I laughed, maybe too quickly. He kissed my cheek and asked, "You'll miss me, right? Got any plans while I'm gone?" I forced a playful shrug. "Nothing much. Just some yoga sessions." He nodded and walked away. I didn't notice the way his eyes lingered on the closet, on my suitcase. The next morning, I dropped him off at the airport. He kissed me, long, slow, meaningful. The kind of kiss that almost pulled the confession out of my throat. But guilt is fragile. Selfishness is powerful. "Goodbye, Aaron," I whispered, watching him disappear into the crowd. When I got home, the silence wrapped around me like a warning. Every framed photo, every memory felt like it was screaming at me. But I turned away. Charles texted me, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby." And whatever was left of my conscience finally shut up. The next day arrived like a dream. I grabbed my suitcase, locked the door behind me, and stepped toward what I believed was happiness. The airport felt brighter, louder, almost welcoming. Charles was already there, grinning, waving me over. He kissed me right there in public, bold and unapologetic. For the first time in so long. I didn't care who saw. "Ready for paradise?" he asked. I nodded, glowing. We handed over our tickets, checked the bags, and waited near the gate. I remember laughing at something stupid he said when an airport officer approached us. "Excuse me, ma'am." "Sir. We need you both to step aside for a routine inspection." My stomach twisted. "Is there a problem?" Charles asked defensively. "Just standard procedure," the officer replied. "Come with us." We followed. My hands trembled. My heartbeat thundered. They opened our luggage, unzipping everything with slow, deliberate movements. And then, the officer's expression shifted. His face hardened. And in that moment, I felt the ground tilt beneath me because I suddenly understood. This wasn't routine at all. This was something else. Something planned. Something waiting for me. A trap built from my own sins. And Aaron's quiet, devastating smile. Another officer lifted his radio, his voice sharp and official. "Ma'am, I need you to stay right where you are." Those words didn't just echo, they slammed into me like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. What's happening?" I stuttered, my throat tightening. "Those aren't mine." "What are you talking about?" And then I saw what they meant. Small packets, perfectly wrapped, catching the glare of the airport lights like tiny, deadly diamonds. Drugs. Charles's face drained of all color. My legs went numb. My mind blanked. My whole world tilted. People were staring now, phones up, flashes popping, strangers whispering like they already knew the ending to a story I hadn't even understood yet. My chest tightened. My mouth dried out. I glanced around desperately for someone, anyone, who might help, but every pair of eyes looked like judgment. And when they began reading me my rights, that's when the truth hit me. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't an accident. This was punishment. Karma had finally caught up. The lights, the shouting, the grip of cold steel handcuffs biting into my wrists, they're still sounds I hear in my nightmares. Everything after that moment blurred, like a cruel movie I was trapped inside with no pause button. I remember my own voice shaking as I screamed, "This has to be a mistake. I don't even know what that is." But no one listened. The officers spoke in clipped, emotionless voices, professional, distant, treating me like just another criminal at the gate. Charles stood beside me, frozen stiff, his skin sheet white. I searched his eyes for comfort, for some sign that he was with me in this nightmare. But all I saw was panic. And something worse, guilt. "Charles, please, say something," I whispered. He didn't. He couldn't even look at me. And in that moment, as they led us away, I realized the truth. Whatever we once were, it wasn't love anymore. It was survival. The airport security office felt like a cage. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, showing me a reflection in the metal desk that didn't look like me at all. My makeup smudged, hair messy, streaks of tears cutting across my cheeks like war paint. They unpacked my suitcase again. My dresses, toiletries, sandals, every innocent piece of my life suddenly twisted into something sinister. Then the packets appeared again, placed too perfectly, hidden too intentionally. Mrs. Langford, one of the agents, said, "Do you know what these are?" I shook my head so hard it hurt. No, I swear, I've never seen those in my life." He exchanged a look with another officer, the kind of look that silently says, "We've heard this story 1,000 times." My pulse hammered in my ears. I could barely breathe. Hours passed, questions I couldn't answer, accusations I couldn't fight. Who gave you the bags? Were you aware of any illegal activity? Did you know your traveling companion has a record? My head snapped up. A record? Charles doesn't have a record, I whispered. The agent raised a brow. You mean Charles R. Mitchell? Age 41. Prior arrest for distribution and possession. Suspended sentence in 2018. The world dropped out from under me. Charles, a drug dealer. It didn't fit. It couldn't fit. He was my trainer, my friend, my escape, my obsession. But suddenly, every detail shifted. His charm, his confidence, his expensive watch that never made sense with his salary. All those last-minute business trips that supposedly had nothing to do with me, they didn't sound so harmless anymore. My stomach twisted. My hands went ice cold. By the time they transferred me to the city holding center, the adrenaline had drained out of me completely, leaving a heavy, hollow emptiness behind. I sat in the back of the police van staring at my reflection in the window, a reflection I didn't even recognize. And somewhere between the airport and the station, the truth hit me like a brick. I wasn't being detained. I wasn't being questioned. I was being arrested. For drug possession. For something that could destroy my entire life. When they fingerprinted me, my hands shook so violently the officer had to steady them. When they snapped my mugshot, I could barely hold my head up. And through it all, one name kept playing in my mind like a broken record. Aaron. What would he think? What would he say when he saw this? The man I had betrayed would watch me on the evening news wearing an orange jumpsuit, standing behind bars. The shame felt suffocating. It wasn't until the next morning that they finally allowed me a phone call. My fingers trembled as I dialed Aaron's number. I prayed he'd pick up. He didn't. So I left a message, broken, sobbing, barely coherent. Aaron, please. Something terrible has happened. I didn't do this. Please call me back. Please. I called again. And again. Still nothing. Later that day, they brought me in for another interrogation. A tall DA agent with a calm, piercing stare introduced himself as Agent DeFranco. He placed a folder on the table. Photos of the packets, my boarding pass, Charles's booking photo, and mine. Mrs. Langford, he said steadily, you are being charged with possession and transportation of controlled substances. We know your companion, Mr. Mitchell, is involved in narcotics distribution. What we need to know is what you knew. My mouth dried out. I didn't know anything, I whispered. I swear to God. He tilted his head. You exchanged several messages about this trip. Emails about relaxation supplies and travel plans. Care to explain those? My stomach dropped. Those emails weren't about drugs. They were about the affair. About sneaking away together. But I couldn't say that. I couldn't confess to that on top of everything else. I don't remember, I stammered, voice breaking. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Mrs. Langford, you seem like a smart woman. But right now you're looking at serious time. If you don't cooperate, you're going down with him. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I can't. I don't know anything. He closed the folder slowly. Then get comfortable. You'll have plenty of time to think. That night in the holding cell was the longest of my life. The concrete floor froze my bones. The blanket smelled of bleach. A woman in the next cell hummed some eerie, tuneless melody until dawn. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision that led me to this point. Every lie, every text, every moment I ignored the voice in my head whispering, "You did this to yourself." The next morning, a guard told me I had a visitor. For a split second, my heart leapt. Aaron. It had to be Aaron. It wasn't. It was my father. He looked older, worn down by disappointment more than age. He sat across from me through the glass and spoke softly. "Evelyn, what have you done, sweetheart?" I broke instantly. "Dad, please. I didn't do this. I swear I didn't." He looked down, shaking his head. "They say they found drugs in your luggage. You were traveling with that man, Charles. What were you thinking?" I pressed my palms to the glass. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I thought I loved him." He closed his eyes for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, it was just one name, one word. "Aaron." And hearing it from my father's mouth shattered something inside me. I lowered my head and sobbed until I could barely breathe. "Dad, please. Please just tell him I'm sorry." My father's voice was low, almost ashamed. "I tried calling him," he murmured. "But he's already spoken with the DEA." My heart stuttered. "He talked to them?" "Yes," my father whispered. "They're searching the house right now. He gave them permission. He's angry, Evelyn, and he's hurt. He doesn't know if forgiveness is even possible." The air left my lungs in one painful rush. Aaron had already turned his back on me. After that, days melted into weeks, and the world became one long, suffocating blur. The case kept tightening around me like a noose. It didn't matter how many times I said I was innocent. Charles refused to see me. His lawyer pushed every ounce of blame in my direction, claiming I planned the trip, I handled the arrangements. I sat through every hearing like a ghost of myself, silent, shrinking, barely breathing. My attorney pulled me aside one day and whispered, "Stay quiet. Don't make things worse." But things were already worse. The DA discovered enough incriminating material in Charles's home to bury him for years. Yet that didn't save me. They said my involvement, my connection, made me complicit. Then one day, after months of silence, Aaron finally walked in. I don't know what I expected, rage, heartbreak, maybe tears. But the expression I saw was far crueler. He was indifferent. He sat across from me with perfect posture, face expressionless, voice cold enough to freeze bone. "Don't waste time apologizing," he said. "I only came to hear how you ended up on a plane to Hawaii with that man. How drugs ended up in your luggage." "Aaron, please," I begged, the words tumbling out in sobs. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't. Someone must have planted them." He shook his head slowly, eyes filled with a weary kind of disgust. "You were having an affair, Evelyn. Don't lie anymore. I saw everything, the emails, the photos. You betrayed me." His words sliced into me like blades. "I'm sorry," I whispered, trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you. He cut me off sharply. "You broke something that can't be repaired. I'm filing for divorce. Don't expect me to wait for you." He stood up, turned away, and walked out of my life without looking back. That night, they moved me to county jail to await trial. The clang of the cell door slamming shut behind me was louder than any scream I'd ever heard. The cell was cramped, metal bunk, thin mattress, one flickering light bulb that buzzed like it hated me. As I curled on the bed, staring into the dark, I whispered the words that tasted like poison. "I deserve this." And for the first time, I truly believed it. Every lie I'd told, every reckless moment, every selfish decision, they had led me straight here. Maybe the drugs weren't mine, but the punishment, the humiliation, the destruction of everything I loved, that was karma. And karma never loses its way. Time twisted strangely behind bars. Days dissolved into one another, nights bled into gray mornings. Silence became its own kind of torture. The first week felt like drowning, like choking on the life I'd destroyed. The second week, I stopped counting altogether. Months passed before I learned how to simply exist inside those walls. You stop waiting for doors to open. You stop hoping for forgiveness. You stop expecting to be saved. The food tasted like metal. The air smelled of bleach and hopelessness. The women around me, addicts, thieves, mothers, Each carried their own mistakes, their own hells. I listened to their stories, sometimes offering comfort, sometimes pretending I belonged. But deep down, I knew I didn't belong, not because I was better, but because I was worse. They stole money. I stole a man's heart and crushed it. My cellmate, Ruth, a grandmother with gentle eyes and a mountain of grief behind them, was doing 15 years for fraud. One sleepless night she asked softly, "So what did you do, honey?" I hesitated. I cheated on my husband, and everything spiraled from there. She let out a sad little laugh. "Isn't it always complicated?" A tiny smile tugged at my lips, but the tears came before I could answer. "I ruined his life," I whispered. "And mine. And I don't even know why." She gave me a long, knowing look. "You'll spend years trying to figure that out. But here's the truth we all learn eventually. We don't realize the value of peace until it's ripped away." Her words stayed with me like a stain on my soul. Over the next 5 years, I clawed at redemption however I could. Teaching yoga to inmates, reading to newcomers, volunteering in the library, listening to the tears of women who broke on their first night inside. Sometimes I'd see myself in the cracked mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. Early gray hair, exhausted lines, a spirit dulled but somehow clearer. I thought about Aaron often, about what we were, what we could have still been. There was a time I complained he was too quiet, too steady, too predictable. I thought Charles's chaos made me feel alive. But adrenaline fades. Excitement dies. Stability is what lasts. And I traded the only man who loved me for a fantasy that didn't care whether I lived or died. His face as he walked out of that visitation room, cold, blank, detached, became the punishment I carried far longer than any prison sentence. The day of my release arrived like a faint whisper I didn't trust. The warden's voice echoed, "Langford, pack up." 5 years gone. When the gates opened, daylight felt too sharp. I stood outside clutching a small cardboard box. A Bible, a photo of my parents, and a worn letter Aaron had sent through my lawyer years ago. It wasn't loving. It wasn't even gentle. Just one simple line, written in his elegant handwriting. "I hope you find peace, Evelyn. Because I already have." It was the last thing I ever heard from him. When I walked free, I had nowhere to go. Our house had been sold. My parents fled to Florida, too exhausted to endure the gossip attached to my name. 4 months, I lived quietly in a tiny apartment above a laundromat, working part-time at a yoga studio that didn't question my past. I smiled when I had to, but most days I felt like a ghost pretending to be human. Then one afternoon his name appeared, unexpectedly, on my screen. A business headline. Aaron Whitman named Vice President of Harrington Marketing Group, New York office. There he was, older, polished, confident. Still calm. Still steady. Still the man I had crushed. And I felt something twist in my chest. Pain, pride, regret, maybe all of it. For weeks I argued with myself. Should I reach out? Did I even have the right? But some words sit inside you for too long, and eventually they demand to be spoken. So one icy January morning, I boarded a train to New York. His office towered over the city, sleek glass, sharp lines reflecting the skyline like a mirror. I stood frozen in the lobby until the receptionist cleared her throat politely. "Ma'am, do you have an appointment?" I swallowed hard. When I walked up to the receptionist, my voice almost failed me. "No, but please tell him it's Evelyn. Evelyn Whitman." She hesitated, like even she wasn't sure I belonged in a place this polished, but she made the call. A few quiet seconds passed before she finally nodded. "He'll see you." My knees nearly buckled. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, it felt like stepping into a world that wasn't mine anymore. Everything smelled wealthy. Sure. Controlled. Like a life built without chaos, without me. And then I saw him. Aaron. He looked flawless. A gray suit that probably cost more than my rent, posture straight, expression steady. A little older, sure, but somehow more alive than I'd ever seen him. Maybe that's what a clean conscience does for a man. For a long moment we just stared. Finally, I managed to whisper, "You look well." He gave the smallest nod. "What do you want, Evelyn?" His voice wasn't harsh, wasn't angry, just calm. The same calm that once made me feel safe, and now made me feel like I was shrinking inside my own skin. "I'm not here to make excuses," I said quietly. "I just needed you to know. I didn't know about the drugs. I swear, Aaron, I didn't." He studied me with that unreadable look he always had when he was deciding how much truth he believed in a person. "Maybe not," he finally said, leaning back. "But you knew about the affair. You knew about the lies. And that alone was enough." Tears pricked behind my eyes. "I lost everything because of that mistake. I've paid for it every single day since." He exhaled slowly, almost disappointed. "And I suppose that's how karma works, isn't it? You always said you wanted excitement, Evelyn. I hope you found enough of it." I bit my trembling lip, swallowing the sob clawing its way up my throat. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," I whispered. I still love you." For a second, just one fragile heartbeat, his face softened. Then it disappeared behind that familiar emotional armor. "Love?" he repeated almost quietly. "You call what you did love?" Before I could speak, the desk phone rang. He pressed the button, eyes still locked on mine. "Yes, Mary?" A woman's voice filled the office. "Sir, Leona just confirmed the 4 tickets for tonight's gala. Her parents will be joining you." He smiled, small but real. "Good. Tell her I'll handle everything." The name slammed into me like a fist. Leona. He had moved on. Not with a fling, with someone real. Someone he could bring to a gala. Someone whose parents he met. "You found someone?" I breathed. He didn't even pretend. "It's been years, Evelyn. You didn't expect me to wait forever, did you?" I dropped my gaze as tears dripped onto his pristine floor. "No, you deserve happiness." He stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "And you deserve peace. I hope you find it someday." I nodded slowly. "I hope so too. But peace won't mean much without forgiveness." He hesitated just slightly before saying softly, "Forgiveness isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn. Goodbye, Evelyn." Security stepped in quietly as he turned away. I wanted to scream, to collapse, to tell him everything I never had the courage to admit. But nothing came out. Just silence. My oldest companion. As I stepped into the elevator, the doors closed slowly, just slow enough for me to catch one last glimpse of him. Standing by the window, staring at the skyline, like I was already a distant memory. Outside, the city roared back to life. Cars honked. People laughed. The world kept spinning, indifferent to the ruins of my heart. I walked until my feet burned, until the streetlights blurred into streaks of color and the world around me became nothing but background noise. Eventually, I sank onto a cold park bench, letting the winter wind bite at my cheeks like I somehow deserved it. Nearby, life continued as if my world hadn't fallen apart. A woman flipping calmly through a book. A couple laughing over something small and silly. A little boy throwing crumbs to pigeons with the kind of joy only innocence can hold. Heartbreak doesn't stop the world. It just leaves you standing still while everything else moves on without you. With numb fingers, I reached into my purse and pulled out the only thing I still had from Aaron. The letter he'd written years ago, back when he still believed in me. "I hope you find peace." For the first time in longer than I could remember, I smiled. A tiny, trembling smile. But real. Maybe, just maybe, I was finally beginning to understand what he meant. Later that night, lying in the cramped little room I was renting, I whispered into the darkness, "Aaron, I hope you're happy." Outside, the city hummed softly, steady, indifferent, alive. And as I closed my eyes, I didn't feel peace, but I felt acceptance. Maybe karma had already punished me. Maybe life had forgiven me in its own quiet way. But one truth settled deep inside me. A truth I could no longer outrun. Some mistakes don't destroy you. They shape you. They carve you into something wiser, if you let them. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to Dark Infidelity Stories for more raw, emotional tales of betrayal, redemption, and the heavy truths life teaches the hard way. Like the video, share it, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might help someone who's living this right now.